It's a very interesting process. As I was looking through all the comments and thoughts that everyone had generated about colleges of education, and we actually came up with, and they're behind you here, I saw some splits inside of the framework of all the suggestions. At the first level, there were changes that were being suggested that we could call tactical, and they're actually within the current system. So you can consider that, and these will all be posted up for you. These are a lot of the things that were on that list, the big ideas that were on that list. They actually can be done now. Okay, they're things that one could consider to be improvements or innovations that are possible within the current system. And there's a whole series of them. As you look through this particular drop-down, you'll notice that there's curricular changes, there's experiential and practice changes, there's accountability changes, there's collaboration and partnership changes. Every one of those is actually something that we can do and probably should do in the interim when we're trying to figure out how to get the big ideas that are also part of the basis of this conference into action and moving along, so that we're not sitting on our hands waiting for change to happen. We will begin incremental innovations and improvements now as we move forward to what I call the big ideas. And these are changes. Could I have the next screen, please? Whoever's in control.
Oh, the other...
yeah, pulled up the other document if you would.
There you go.
I broke the other document into changes at the transformational level and that are outside the current system. Okay, and so you could just consider these to be the big ideas that we've been able to glean from this particular conference. These things are provocative. I found them provocative. They're not everything that was said by the group, but they're things that we really need to think about. One of them that I'm particularly attracted to is the notion of colleges of ed and local schools needing to define or redefine student performance to broaden and enhance the operational definition. There's a thing called face validity, and you're never going to be able to convince a teacher that the kid's scores on a standards-based assessment represents all of student learning. Okay? That's validity, face validity. What we've got to do is broaden that definition of student performance. We've got to include environmental variables. We've got to include demographic variables. We've got to include other kinds of factors into this notion of how do students actually perform, so that we can create pictures of our students that actually can be transmitted to a larger audience and can be understood, and most importantly, that our teachers will buy into. That they will say, yes, you have captured what student performance is. The whole notion of moving toward learning teams that are based on differentiated skills and competencies as opposed to isolated, content-driven, level-based positions inside of our schools. This is something that Tom spoke about pretty eloquently. Most people have really enjoyed this particular concept. You've seen it come up in multiple forms. Here's one that came up that I think it was very important that Chris Deedy had mentioned. That was the schools and college of education must transform together into a new structural model that demonstrates the complementary and symbiotic potential for new teaching and learning processes. Now that's a big idea. We're talking about a major experiment somewhere in the United States of America where the redefinition of the relationship as well as curricular processes, assessment systems, and everything is done together so that you literally raise the entire system in one move. Another one that came out also that's been articulated before is the state legislation as an avenue of structural change. Our friends from New Hampshire have made that quite clear that they're interested in doing this, but what I'd like to do is to consider you to expand it to look at multiple state legislators acting in concert to radically change their state's P20 educational systems. That would create a wave of movement throughout the country that could not be stopped. If we wait for New Hampshire's results, we're going to be 5 or 6 years down the road before we even know what happened. This is one of those environments where we actually need multiple critical states to move together on something. And finally, leaders collaborating for change. This whole notion of the collaboration could be extended to all of the key school, district, and college of education administrators, legislators, and community leaders working together to initiate these changes. We often work together in teams of 2, and then we split off and work with someone else. Rarely do we work together as a group to try to push forward. This would be an important collaboration. And finally, I have an ending question for all of us. It's one that's been vexing me. How do we engage these changes before the opportunity window closes? Should it be facilitated or forced? How can you create a focused and systematic educational change process that's allowed to evolve in its own space and to derive replicable results that can scale across the educational system of the U.S.? It's a question I think that we've been playing around with this entire conference, and I'm hoping that we can move forward with it as we go forward into the future. Thank you all so much.
I'm Jim Haley. I'm the assistant superintendent at Sweeney ISD. It's a mid-sized school, 3A, with about 2,000 students, southwest of Houston. So that's my perspective, and I would want to make these points when talking to school administrators, superintendents, principals, and those types of people. From the very first meeting that we had on Sunday night, the word space has been used differently than the context that I usually think of space. We were talking about rethinking the constraints that we have of time, and schedules, and facilities, and testing, teaching tools, and learning tools. So with that in mind, I've used SPACE as an acronym to help convey the messages that I want to give to principals and superintendents and school leaders. First, S, SPACE happens. It's going to happen, it is happening, it's going to continue to happen. The space to teach and learn, the space to perform, the space to take chances, and realize that space is changing and it will continue to change with new technologies all the time, but space happens. P, permission. Permission for us to take risks without fear of repercussion. There is a fear among teachers and administrators that if we try these new things and scores decline, then our jobs are on the line, and our schools' accountability and ratings are on the line, and that impacts our communities. And so we need a hold harmless context where we can do these things and still have accountability, but not be tied solely to that one test that's given in late spring, because that sense of accountability is just going to diminish the implementation of new technologies and new teaching strategies and all of these things. It really stagnates it. And this goes all the way down to the teacher evaluations and principal evaluations, superintendent jobs and contracts, and our campus and district ratings. Accountability has got to change. That's the A. We need to change the way that we define success for students and define the academic performance measures that we're looking at. Compliance and data gathering is a big part of my job. I'm always filling out the applications and turning in the summative evaluations for our programs, and the accountability for how we spent the money that was given to us by the state and the federal government and also our taxpayers. So the way we determine our accountability has got to change. C, curriculum. The curriculum that we use. There's three curriculums. One is mandated curriculum, and that comes usually from the state, and the taught curriculum comes from the teacher, and the tested curriculum that the students are accountable for. But beyond that, it's really what do you take day to day that you're going to teach in that classroom. And our district is not large enough to have a large body of people write curriculum. We don't have that expertise or time or training to do that. So our district this year decided to purchase a curriculum. And this curriculum is called C-Scope. It's written by 15 of the 20 service centers across the state of Texas. And this year, over 1 million students are using it, and over half the districts in the state. And I'm very concerned because nowhere in that curriculum are there any provisions for problem-based learning. None. And as I came and I heard that over and over and over, and I'm thinking that we trusted this curriculum, we believed in it, and these are professionals and innovative thinkers and all that are aligning us for college readiness and for the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills and all of these things, then this has got to be a part of that, or we're going to keep getting what we've always gotten because we're teaching what we've always taught. The E, educate. Educate everyone at every level. And I think the farther you get away from the classroom and the students, the more education really needs to happen. Because tonight we're going to have a school board meeting at my